Okay, let's go. I got a video for you. This is going to be a little different than usual. This is a kind of education slash behind the scenes how I compare two earphones. When I say that I like one better than the other, I think one sounds like it's got more detail than the other, etc., etc. This is how I do it and how I base my opinions. And maybe this will be helpful for others, at least to understand how I do this. This would require you to have a tablet with a free app that measures dB, SPL, sound. Basically, there's lots of free ones. I can mention the one that's on the screen right now. You can see it keeps cycling, going back to 77 dB because I'm actually doing this right now. The other thing you would need is a mic, like a 711, because you got to measure this now. And you would also need, if you're going to do this simultaneously, you're going to need a splitter like the Headamp 6 Pro, which has got 6 channels, as the 6 Pro would indicate. I use a file from a place called Media College, and they have 100, 250, 440, 1 kilohertz, and 10 kilohertz, and they're in WAV or MP3, and I have the WAV file. Now, I'll explain why 440. Let me take some sets here. Let me just click this one, 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 and just leave it alone. These are lined up at 1 kilohertz. This is pretty standard. When I compare sets, I usually line them up at around 500 hertz because the mids are really where there's less variance. There's lots of ways to do bass. As you can see, the flare of the different mid basses and sub bass tunings that these sets have. And then there's all kinds of ways to do upper mids and treble. And no matter where I would line these up at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 8, there would be variances a lot in the sub bass and mid bass, and the upper mids and treble. So that wouldn't change. Just the positions would change. The consistent area of most stability would be probably between 4 and 800 hertz. That's where there is most likely to be less variations. So if I'm going to anchor sets, I'm going to anchor it in the area that they're probably not going. I certainly wouldn't do it at 100 hertz or 200 hertz because of bass tucks or big bass. I wouldn't do it anywhere in the treble because there might be a 10 dB dip on one set and a spike in that same spot in another, so it would make any sense. But there's not likely to be a 10 dB spike at 440 or a cut or a 5 dB cut or a spike at 440. That is not going to happen aside from a couple 64 audios. So that's why we're picking that region. Now, to start the process, we get in and we have a set right now, and I'm using a DAP. So I do two things. One is the DAP, whatever I'm using at the time. I'm using the Onyx right now because I like it. It's easy to use, and I'm cycling through a file. And this is coming out at 77 dB, and this is the 8 Voix, I believe, which is, I'm kind of doing a video for it right now, in a weird way. Now, just to show you, 32, 31. Let's get back down to that. There we go. Okay. So about 30, 31 is where this is hitting 77 dB using this file. Now I take this out and I unplug this, and then I take the alpha omega, which is using the same cable, and I'm using the same tips. And I'm going to take that set and I'm going to stick it in, and I'm using the same tips for measure because they need to be same. And now you can see this is going to boost. Oh, it's going to drop because this is harder to push. 63, 64. So where the 8 Voix is around 77 or 78, this same file that you can see right here is around 70, 69. So it's not the same, obviously. So using the same file on the same device to get this to 77, I'm going to go ahead and start to push this up. We're at 38, 77. $39. Okay. So the difference between these two is about 8 steps on this DAP. 8 or 9 steps. It's right about there. They're obviously not the same. So these are, the Alpha Omega takes more to drive than the 8 Voix, and you can check other specs and say, well, that's obvious. That's fine, but exactly what does that mean on your DAP? Okay, I'm going to ghetto edit here and jump in. I don't need to make this as long as it is. Basically, you can take the DAP out if you want and go straight to the splitter that you have on your table or your workstation or wherever you do your reviews. And on that, you have, if it's like this, I would assume you probably have a bass and a treble, a balance, and an input. And we're focusing on the input because we don't want to do any adjustments on any of the other ones. You do the same thing that I did with the DAP. And this is part of what I do anyway. I do a DAP that I listen to regularly at that time, and then I also just go to my regular listening station, because when one is harder to drive and I'm actually having to put more input in on channel 1, on the harder drive, it just feels like it's confirmation. This is all, it should be that way, but I like to do it the double, but you don't have to do that. So then we take it, we go into channel 1, we open up the app that you use to do your listening when you do evaluations, and you open that file that's in there, not on your desktop, or because that might play differently. PC settings are kind of interesting how they work. But just to totally remove it, load it into whatever you have all your listening files into, just because why have any chance of there's something going on with your PC? And then adjust set 1 until you get it to 77 dB, because this will be running to the mic and to the tablet, and you're measuring it again. And then you set it, and then you leave it. And then you go to channel 2 and you repeat the same thing. You focus on the input dial, or whatever it's called, gain on your device, and you load it into the mic, and then you measure it and you get it to 77 dB, wherever that is, and however that turn is. It'll probably be a dial representative that's similar to what your DAP was. And now we are ready to go to our music library and start to do the listening. Now is okay, because we've removed lots of things with the A and B. We've removed the cable, which can have a different resistance or impedance, and it can impact. Does it make it good or bad? Different topic. Is it good to have the same one because these don't measure the same, different cables? Of course it is. So get the same cable. Doesn't matter if it's a great cable, because I don't even know what that is. These cables have microphonics, but that's not what I'm really doing here. I'm trying to make sure that the actual number of 77 dB is coming out of really the same lead, same production. And then we're using the same tips, which for me would be the SpinFit CP100 or the pluses, because these fit my fat pipes, my fatty ear holes, and these go on everything. So I need these on whatever earphones that I'm listening to, both pairs, and then I can go through my library and take my notes, because I've removed everything. The cables are the same, the tips are the same. These are playing at 450 hertz, like I showed you on the Squig, and that is a region that is, if we consider the sub bass, the mid bass, the mids, the upper mids, and the treble, the area that's most likely to be similar with not having abrupt cuts or boosts, sans a couple 64 audios, is around the mids, and it's going to be between 400 and 800 hertz. The ear gain can be a little before 1K, so it would be different. It could be very abrupt. Its angle of attack can be different. Over years of listening, and excluding bass headsets that have enormous mid bass, and it doesn't actually have mids because it goes all the way to the ear gain, generally speaking, you're going to have your flattest, unmessed with area between about 400 and 800 hertz. So line both sets up there, correct them and adjust them for the same output, and then proceed with your listening. That's about as good a way as I've ever come across, and so I use it all the time. I talk about companies and I say transparency of drivers, etc. It behooves me to tell you, when I say that I think item A sounds better than item B, what exactly do I do to get and come to that conclusion? Well, I just showed you, and for the record, this is what it is. This is how I do it. You might want to try this, or you might want to do your own way, but there should be some effort put into the comparing of two items, and then the recommendation to strangers on the internet that you should spend your money, hard-earned money, maybe very hard-earned money, on this set because I think it's better than this other set. Well, what did you do to come to that conclusion? If you don't think this is important, this really isn't the channel for you. This is extremely important. And this is how I do it. And I'm going to go ahead and leave it right there. You guys have a great weekend. It's a Friday in Japan. And, oh, yeah, tell me your favorite color below. And I have a set of the classic JVC. They're the, I think, 1100, the flagship Woodies. I got a set behind me. That'll go to somebody that comments below this video. Give the video a thumbs up if you actually like it. If you're not a subscriber, please go ahead and subscribe. I'm free to pick a subscriber from my comment section because I can do that. Other Mr. Beast, all those big channels do the same thing. I just can't say quid pro quo, like if you do this, I'm going to do that. So you don't have to subscribe, but I'm going to look for that little icon that says subscriber, and I'm going to pull somebody up out of there. To the person that won the Terra, it should be going out tomorrow because I'm going to be sending out, which is, I'm already starting to pack it up, the Ceramic Mems is going to a Patreon. So congrats to him. I think that's about to clear, and we are out. Have a nice weekend.